This meeting of the Margate City Planning Board is called to order. Please stand for the flag salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, please.
Tom Collins.
Here.
Clem Wozleski. Rich Patterson.
Here.
Mike Cristaldi.
Here.
Jim Galantino.
Here.
Margaret Gubernalty.
Here.
Craig Palmisano.
Here.
Despina Hess. Remy Pelosi.
Here.
Joe DiGirolamo.
Here.
Ron Grupo.
Here.
Mike Richmond.
Here.
This meeting is being held in accordance with due public notice thereof and pursuant to the New Jersey State Sunshine Law. Notice of this meeting was advertised in the press, and a copy of same has been posted on the bulletin board in the municipal building. Despina Hess has entered the building. All applicants are hereby advised that should you receive board approval tonight, you must come forward and sign a form which informs you regarding the timing of receiving building permits and mercantile licenses. At the end of your case tonight, please see the board administrator to sign the two information sheets. I'd like to hear a motion to approve the minutes of the previous meeting.
I'll make a motion.
I'll second.
Did you get that? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. I'd like to hear a motion for approval of decisions and resolutions. Number 49, 2018, Frank and Gina Freon. Number 50, 2018, Marcy Tanker. Number 51, 2018, Glenn and Danielle McDonald. Number 52, 2018, Kyle Butts. Number 53, 2018, Seth Hoffman and Joanna Katz.
I'll make a motion.
Before someone makes a motion, I think Joanna and I determined it's actually, the numbers are 49 through 53.
That's what he read.
That's what I read.
Oh, I thought he said 50 through 54. Okay.
No, this is the correct one.
Okay. I stand corrected then.
I made the motion. We need a second.
I'll second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? None. Motion passes. The case of Christopher and Doris Pisani, 438 North Vendome Avenue, will not be heard tonight. Has it been rescheduled?
I spoke to Mr. Balanson. He's going to renotice and republish.
Okay.
So,
So
whatever that's going to be.
all right. So if you're here for 438 North Vendome Avenue, it will not be heard. It will be renoticed. First case is Michael Fanagorakis, 9306 Monmouth Avenue, Block 327, Lot 97, C30B in the WAPC district to grant a C variance relief for rear yard setback, side yard setback, combined side yard setback, and possibly others. Taxes and water are current, and proof of advertising and notifying is satisfied. Mr. McLaren, please be sworn in.
Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Oh. I'm just swearing in our
Oh, I'm sorry.
our board, our zoning manager. We'll get to you in a moment.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Board Chairman, Board members. My report is based on Michael Fanakakis. If I butcher that, please forgive me. It is Christmas.
That's not a problem.
9306 Monmouth Avenue, Block 327, Lot 97. It's in the WAPC district, which is the Washington Avenue pedestrian corridor. That is a result of the master plan reexamination. The FEMA elevation is not relevant tonight. However, this is a hardship and substantial benefit variance request. Page 1 and 2 is the zoning schedule. Page 3 of the documents reviewed. The variances are required as follows. Rear yard setback for a deck, whereas 20 feet is a minimum setback required. About 7.5 feet exists to the building, and 0 feet is proposed. Side yard setback to the deck, whereas 5 feet is a minimum required. About 3.5 feet, which was scaled, exists to the building, and 0 feet is proposed. Combined side yard setback for the deck, whereas 10 feet is the minimum required. About 5.32 feet exists to the building, and 1.82 feet is proposed. Again, going back to page 1, the background is as follows. The applicant is seeking relief from the ordinances of the City of Margate in order to construct a new rear yard non-conforming second-floor deck that'll overlook an existing parking lot next door. Again, the zoning analysis reflects a new WAPC zone shown in Schedule B1 of the city's land use ordinance. I'll review some of the comments. The variances being requested may have a negative impact on the potential development of the adjacent properties within the newly created Washington Avenue pedestrian corridor zone. No waivers have been requested, but I suggest a waiver from the checklist submission. Again, I would see no detriment in granting that waiver. I also suggest a waiver from any street trees if they are approved. There's really no spot to put a tree. And the same thing with the grass planting strip. The proposed setbacks will be to the property line, which is not the intent of the ordinance in this zone, which is the newly created zone. There is very little to no landscaping on this property, and there's very little space available to create landscaping. The existing density is 1.4 times the permitted density for the zone. Again, that's grandfathered in. It's really not relevant to this, but I just want to explain why there's very little space on this property. Although the size and shape of the property provides a hardship, the board shall weigh the proposed improvements and the impact of these improvements. Again, my recommendations are that the applicant is burdened with providing proof to substantiate that the detriments are outweighed by any benefits. And I turn over to the applicant.
Now, if you could just state your name and address for the record, and I'll swear you in.
Michael Fanergakis, 9306 Monmouth Avenue.
And you swear affirm the testimony you're about to give with the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth?
Nothing but the truth.
Thank you.
Did I butcher your name?
Michael Fanergakis.
Did I butcher your
No,
name when
you
I
did
said it?
great.
I think I did.
Oh, okay, you did?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Gentlemen and ladies and gentlemen, good evening. As you can see in the pictures and everything, I just want to build a little balcony so my family and I can enjoy the summertime in the morning, having a cup of coffee, something very small, as you can see. From all my neighbors that I've spoken to, they don't have a problem with it. They're pretty pleased with it and everything. So just asking for your permission if I can go ahead and do that.
Have you looked at putting it on the front of the house instead of the back of the house?
I don't have anything in the front to do.
You what?
I don't have any room in the front to do in the front because I have a garage there, because I have a house in front of me and then a little driveway, and then, so you can't do it in the front.
Is the dimension on this thing here,
Yes, sir.
says 72 inches, is that from the chimney or is that from the back of the house?
That's the back of the wall of the house.
Back of the wall?
Out,
So
yes,
it's 6 feet out, right?
Yes, sir.
At that point,
correct.
okay.
Can I go back to the front again? You couldn't cantilever a deck out over the front?
Now, there's two garage doors in the front. One garage leads to my neighbor. He gets used as a storage, and I
Right.
have my storage.
Underneath your house?
Underneath my house, correct. So
Right.
you can't do anything in the front.
Well, I mean, I'm asking you, the problem is you're coming right up to the property line with a piece of land that's going to be developed at some point, and that's going to kind of create a hardship for the neighbor.
Can you tell me, in that back lot, is that just a parking space?
just a parking
Is
space.
it easement for another property for parking
I don't
for
think so.
them?
That's just for the parking for the other people that live
Craig,
behind me.
Yes,
there's two houses on Washington. Remember it looked like you crossed two properties to get in there?
yes,
Two houses are on one piece of property.
okay.
So it comes with, the driveway comes on the ocean side, crosses the property and parks under his house.
So they'll probably always keep that as parking.
They're old houses, Craig. It's going to be redeveloped at some point.
Yeah, that's true.
How is that gonna how is building a deck gonna negatively affect if this property ever gets developed? How's it gonna negatively affect it?
You're going to have
You're
9-foot
gonna
platform
have
up
a
in the air.
setback, Huh?
You're gonna have a 9-foot platform in the air, and if they rebuild the house next door, it's gonna be 10 feet away from this platform.
So what's wrong with that?
People
It's
might not
10
want,
feet away. Huh?
They're saying they have to make them.
One at a time, please, into the microphone.
Wouldn't that come under the fire rule of the 5 feet to the property line?
It's not a structure. It's a,
Yeah,
Deck that you
we're
can get
talking
underneath.
future now anyhow. And that's
Again,
what
I just-
now we're saying,
would like to point out that the proposed rear yard setback for this zone is 20 feet. They're going to 0.
It's a weird area, though, I mean,
That's,
yeah, it's just, the whole area is kind of strange.
Well, not from Washington Avenue, though. That's the concern. It's the Washington Avenue frontage, which is gonna be redeveloped. Is that property would be affected, the one with the 2 houses on it, the 2 old houses.
So do you plan on putting a fence back up in the backyard there?
That fence wasn't mine. That was my neighbor behind it.
So there's no fence gonna be there?
There's no fence gonna be there. That's her, she took it down, and she has no desire to put it back up. And that parking lot behind me belongs to her house. The two house that she owns, she's using for her rentals.
The 2 houses that face
Beh-
Washington.
Behind me, right.
Roger, what would be the side yard setback
Speaker, please.
if another house was built, or another whatever was built, where the parking now exists?
10 foot.
So you could have 10 plus the one setback. You could have people sitting on the balcony 11 feet from a set of bedroom windows, perhaps.
Correct.
10 feet. What's the foot setback?
10 foot plus the 1 foot for his setback total.
He has 0 setback, not 1 foot. He's got 0.
Let's say he says 1 foot.
Zero.
per yard,
0.
10 foot then.
Right.
Yeah, I'm 1 foot away from her.
Any other questions from the board? Any comments?
I just have one question. Is that the door there that comes out towards?
That was
the-
the door that doesn't open up.
Okay.
But that will be the entrance to the...
Yes, sir.
Right.
There will be no stairs. The only way you can get onto the balcony is from the inside of the house.
It's not to necessarily sway in either direction. The only observation I'm saying is the fact that we're concerned about, towering over the neighbors or looking down, but, essentially, you're still gonna have a neighbor looking down on your platform if ever it was to be approved application, because there's still a deck just above where yours would fall.
Yes, there is a deck above me.
Is there any, and I don't know if it'll even matter, but is this the smallest it could safely be made as far as width-wise? Or could anything be cut back? Because you're at the 0.
6 foot.
We're at 6 foot. We're, yeah.
Any smaller, it's just a.
It's a small balcony. It's not a very big place. Yes,
was that question asked about the 72 inches to the chimney or to the house?
to the house.
Okay.
Is that an active chimney by any chance? Or just a flue for fire heater?
Excuse me?
Is that an active chimney or is it a flue for a fire? Or,
It's not for a fireplace now.
There'll be no staircase off of that, correct?
There'll be no staircase.
There'll be no staircase.
No staircase.
Anything else from the board? You have anything else you'd like to add, or? Is there anyone here from the public that would like to have any questions or comments? Come forward, state your name, and be sworn in, please.
State your name and address, and I'll swear you in.
It's John Sabasis, 6 North Wilson Avenue, Margate, New Jersey.
Can you just spell your last name, please?
Soubasis.
And do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Thank you.
Hi. I've actively built in Margate. We're a summer resident. I consider myself a year-round resident. Nonetheless, I'm here to support this. I just feel that, number one, it's not of a great impact. I understand the concern of the zone. He's presently overlooking a parking lot, and I think even if the neighbor does ever plan on doing any improvements to their property or renovating or even redeveloping, they'd still have to take into consideration how close his existing conditions are to that property line. I think that there is no detriment as far as him being somewhat elevated, because if the neighboring property does build a home or does something, they're going to be well above his condition, so they'd really have to consider what's already pre-existing. I just think for the small impact that's really there and the hardship that he faces because of the conditions of the property that it sits on, I don't see it really setting a precedent, in somebody else's condition just because of how unique his situation truly is. And that's why I
You own
feel.
both houses? Is that one, on your lot? It looks like one lot
No, they're
with two
condoed.
houses.
They're condos.
Oh, they're condos.
They're condoed. Same with the property to the left of them, and the one to the right of them is a twin, left to right. These are front to back.
Right.
And that's all I have to say.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Public portion is closed. The board has no further comments. Would you read the motion, please?
Sure, someone needs to make a motion for
Did somebody have something? Thought I saw a hand go up. Go ahead.
It's okay, someone needs to make a motion for C variance relief for the following: a rear yard setback to the deck of 0 feet where 20 feet is required, side yard setback to the deck of 0 feet where 5 feet is required, and combined side yard setback to the deck of 1.82 feet where 10 feet is required, and a waiver from the submission of an application checklist. And the conditions will be anything contained in Mr. McLaren's report of December 19th, 2018.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
Tom Collins?
This here is a pure case of our board living with the sins of our fathers. We have a 25-foot lot. You have 2 houses on it. They've condoed it out. It's got more density than God knows what. Going to a 0 setback is just compounding what old zoning did to this property. There's no hardship. You have 2 houses on a 25-foot lot. One of them's yours. You knew what you bought when you got it. So there's no positive to the neighborhood, because going to a 0 setback is not going to be good for any neighborhood. It's just too small of a lot. You got too much on it, and you're trying to expand that, and I just can't vote yes. I vote no.
Clem Wozzeski?
We can't look at just this property for itself. We have to consider the long-term effect of further development in Margate. And I envision this porch in the future being essentially blocked in if there's development on the adjacent property. And I feel that activity back on this proposed porch could have a definite negative effect on the living environment of a development next door. So I can't support it. I have to vote no on the application.
Rich Patterson?
I can't add anything to what the first 2 members said. I vote no.
Michael Cristaldi?
If it continues, it will be a burden on the neighbor if they go to build because of the rules. I can't back this one. I vote no.
Jim Galantino?
I don't know why you just didn't do like a little paver patio in the back, because right now you just got all that stone back there. You can make a nice little, grade level something back there with Roger's approval. I vote no.
Margaret Gubernati?
I have to agree with the other board members and the density and the 0 property line, and if you could do something that Jimmy said, maybe that would suffice. I have to vote no to the application.
Michael Richmond?
Yeah, it is a weird area back there, but I think I have to agree with Tom that it's just kind of exasperating the situation. So I'm gonna have to.
The application fails 0-7.
Thank you. All right, thank you.
Next case is Marla and Richard Milgram, 12 South Mansfield Avenue, Block 114, Lot 14, in the S30 District, to grant a C variance relief, front yard setback to porch, front yard setback to house, third floor deck, distance between pool and vertical structure of house, and possibly others. Taxes and water are current, and proof of advertising and notifying is satisfied. Mr. McLarney? Ron Grupo's recusing himself from this case.
Who is?
Ron.
Ron Group.
Okay.
Thank you, Board Chairman, Board members. This project has gone back and forth a couple times with some issues, information, but here we are. The background is as follows. This report is based on the application of Marla and Richard Milgram. Previously 8601 Atlantic Avenue. It'll be changed to 12 South Mansfield Avenue based on by the Assessor's Office. Block 114, Lot 14, it's within the S40 zone. The effective firm indicates that it's in a flood zone 9, meaning the bottom of the first floor is required to be set at a minimum of 12. The zoning height reference begins at 13. It's a substantial benefit variance. And the background is as follows. The applicant is seeking relief from the ordinances of the City of Margate in order to construct a new single-family dwelling at the corner of South Mansfield Avenue and Atlantic Avenue. The property is a corner property, so there are 2 front yards and 2 side yards. Minimum side yard setbacks are based on the width of each frontage, as the ordinance reads. The site is located within the S40 zone. I believe the chart on the plan states the S30 zone. It's adjacent to the S25 and S30 zones. A few variances are identified below. And again, this application is going to rely pretty heavily on some testimony, on some missing information, and I think the board will be satisfied with that response. Even though the zoning chart is incorrect on the plans, the only change is the lot area and the lot width minimum, and it meets the requirements anyway, so that's a moot point. So the variances required are as follows. On page 3, front yard setback to the building Atlantic Avenue, whereas 10.6 feet is a required prevailing setback, 5 feet is the minimum, 7.9 feet exists on the house that was there, 7.83 feet is proposed. And that's based on the prevailing front yard setback. Front yard setback to the deck on South Mansfield Avenue, whereas 8.9 feet is the required prevailing setback, 8.83 feet is proposed. Again, this is a rounding error converting from inches to a tenth of a foot. Pool side yard setback to clear zone, whereas 3 feet is the minimum clear zone from any structure and 5.33 feet encroachment above the pool is proposed. Third floor decks, whereas third floor decks are not permitted at this location, and 1 is proposed. They are requesting 1 variance or 1 waiver, and that is for a copy of an area map showing all lot lines within 200 feet of the property. Again, I would recommend that that waiver be granted. It's very little impact to the property. The front yard setback along Atlantic Avenue doesn't meet the required prevailing setbacks. However, the prevailing setback is based on 1 existing adjacent property, and the proposed setback is the same as the prior existing setback, but the front of the house is actually moved over, so the impact to the property that it's based off of is further away now with the proposal. The front yard porch deck setback along South Mansfield Avenue, again, this is likely due to a conversion. I mean, it's a couple whiskers wide. The proposed overhead deck encroaches over the water's edge of the pool. However, it's my understanding, and I'll leave that up to the applicant, that this deck is going away. Is that accurate, Eric?
That is correct, Mr. McLaurin. It's not going away, it's going to comply, so.
Going to comply?
That's right.
Fine. The third floor decks are not permitted at this location, however, they are permitted directly across the street from this location. The zoning chart provided shows different lot widths than what the survey indicates by a fair amount. Again, I think that's just a transferring error. I'll leave that up to the applicant to clarify that. Additional information shall be provided, such as floor areas for the first, second, and third floors. Third floor area as it relates to the second floor, revision dates and building coverages, all of which are not shown. Again, I think it's important to demonstrate that the third floor area is no more than half what the second floor is allowed to be.
Were revised plans submitted or not? We don't have plans to show.
Not yet, but that will be a condition of any approval if they get it. It has to show everything that we're asking on this. The landscaping needs to be clarified along with the correct number of shrubs for each front yard and the total. Again, the plan shows a 4-foot-high fence, whereas a minimum of 5 foot is required. I think that's just a typo.
No problem with that, right?
Correct.
We'd like to see a detail of the pool equipment as it's going to be in the garage. If it's going to be high enough, I need to demonstrate that the vehicle can still fit in there,
Absolutely.
even though you meet the parking requirements without it. All runoff should be directed towards the streets, nothing towards the neighbor's property. The proposal shows the driveway, it appears to be 1 foot from the property line, but I want that dimension on the plans. Usually when they build it, it's a little bit different. Show the garage being 1 foot from the property line as well. Show that the driveway follows the design standards for ribbon driveways with proper dimensions. Show the proposed curb cut width, a minimum or maximum of 10 feet is required for a single wide driveway. Please demonstrate that the garage and principal building are not attached in any way. It's not clear, although I've seen Mr. Zacker's plans in the past, and typically they are detached. I just want the testimony provided. Sign and seal survey, I think you did supply me one of those. And again, the variance relief and recommendations are indicated in the report, and I turn it over to the applicant to provide testimony as per our discussions and in the report.
Thank you, Mr. McLaurin, and thank you for your assistance this evening, as well as this morning and this afternoon.
Can I, before you start?
Yes, Mr. Patterson.
What I've been looking at these plans, and I had a lot of questions, things that weren't on there. And I called Roger, and then apparently this morning it was going to be pulled because of incomplete. And Mr. Zacher, this isn't the first time you've had plans that don't meet information the board would like to see. So I wish it had been pulled, but it isn't. But I would ask that you make the plans compliant. You've been before us enough of things the board needs to see. There's just a lack of information. It's terrible copies of the plans. We can hardly read them. Go ahead.
Thank you.
Again, it was my call to put it back on because I felt confident enough with the information. Mr. Zacher did come by and see me, showed me some information. I thought about it, and I thought about the applicants. They made the trip all the way down here, and
That's okay.
I understand
I
what
know
you're
you
saying.
had your reasons, and
Right.
that's fine, but I had, the questions I had were
Sure.
things that weren't shown on the.
And I have the same questions, and that's why I said during my report, this will be testimony heavy to provide satisfaction to the board. And, go ahead.
Right, no, I trust your judgment that you put it back on, but go ahead.
And I thank you, and Marla Milgram, the applicant's here, and she's going to testify as well, and I'm sure she'll thank you for your consideration, because she did come down just for this. And we do also have a bit of a time constraint with regard to getting this house started. So I do want to make it clear from talking to Mr. McLaurin earlier, we're talking about elimination completely of the variance for the pool deck overhang for the vertical structure above. That is not being requested. The plans that ultimately get submitted when construction permits are pulled will show that all of that complies. Third floor habitable space will not exceed 50% of the floor directly beneath.
Including the deck?
Correct. That is not going to,
Including the deck?
talking about the,
Third floor deck?
that's correct.
That's part of the 50%?
The third floor deck, if it's granted, will not I'm sorry. I'm confused by your question, Mr. Patterson.
I think Mr. Patterson is asking that the 50% of the third floor,
Is
does
the
it
livable
include the
area.
deck area?
Does not.
That does not include the deck area, I'm sorry.
Okay.
That does not include the deck. The deck is separate. But the habitable space will not be more than 50% of the floor beneath. With regard to the detail that the board needs to see, as requested by Mr. McLarnon, All of that will be on the plan, and to the extent this is granted tonight, Mr. Manos can certainly make that a part of the condition of approval, which the applicant will abide by. Having said that, we're really talking about the existing condition, which is vacant land, versus what was there previously versus what is proposed. What is proposed almost exactly meets what was there prior to it being demolished. I think that's very important because you take a look at the vacant ground and you say, well, you're working from a clean slate, why do you need these variances? The applicant was very considerate in not going further forward to the street on any of the sides based on what had been there. But the lot, as you all know, is a little bit irregular in that Atlantic Avenue on that spot kind of juts out. It's not a true rectangle. So you've got a bit of the property where Atlantic Avenue runs with a more angular direction towards Atlantic City, and the house across the street on Mansfield, which is the somewhat beat-up, old, modern-looking Miami Vice house that's been in disrepair for quite a while, sticks out even further. So this house, the goal that the Milgrams had was to match the proposed house up as much as possible with what was there previously. The distances, as Mr. McLaren points out, are almost exactly what was there previously. Could have come out further, would need a variance, 5 feet from the property line. They're still back quite substantially from that point. With regard to the third floor deck, as we discussed last month, we discuss almost every month, we're talking more about third floor decks other than on the beach block. If this house was just across the street on Atlantic Avenue, it wouldn't be a variance. Now, other side of Atlantic Avenue, you've got a third floor deck to try to take advantage of the light, air, and open space and views of the ocean, which we believe kind of fits well into the neighborhood.
And then we moved to Ventnor Avenue.
Well, I don't know.
I mean, we just, you were here, were you here when we discussed the decks?
Yes. We
And the
talked
decks
about-
were considered, if they weren't on the beach block, they would be cut into the roof, or they would be included in the 50%. This is none of those things. We didn't come up with rules, but that's what we were
It's a
discussing.
concept that we can certainly discuss as well.
And we
but-
just expanded it to the beach block and talking about others, but it just seems like it's a never-ending move.
Well, I think, yeah, obviously, every case is taken on its face, but when you look at the way the deck is designed, it really has de minimis impact on anyone other than cars driving by, and they're not going to be looking up because it's going to face Atlantic Avenue to try to take advantage of the views of the ocean that obviously the property owners, being on that corner, would like to take advantage of.
Is this house on the corner? I mean, I'm sorry, is the deck on the corner or in the inside?
It's on the corner. I'm sorry. The house or the deck?
The deck?
The deck's in a little bit.
The deck's in the middle of the house.
Yeah.
In the middle of the house or on the far side of the house?
On the southern end. It's on the southern.
Well, why don't I have Mr. Zacher sworn, we can start discussing.
Okay, gavel. Can't have all this.
State your name and business address, please.
Name and business address.
My name is Donald Zacher, architect. Address is 101 North Washington Avenue, Margate.
And do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth?
I do. Yes.
We accept his credentials.
Thank you, Mr. Patterson. Mr. Zacher has testified before this board on many occasions. I'm going to ask him to please walk us through the plan, and then we can answer questions as they come up. So Don, why don't you walk over to your plan and kind of take us through one by one.
The board keep the conversation to nothing?
I'm sorry?
No, you can, that's directly to the board.
The property line along Atlantic Avenue is on a skew. So the closest point for setback for a front yard is 7.9 feet. That's only one point in space. Then it continues to get larger to the full extent where it's 9.5 feet, whereas 10.5 or 10.6 is required based
Just
on
stop for a
the...
second, Don, because this is important. The entire length of the house along Atlantic Avenue is not a variance, but because the lot is misshapen, as we discussed earlier, a point of it is, but then as it goes further towards Mansfield.
That's correct. It's only where I'm pointing, it's only from here to here.
Is what?
Where the variance exists.
The variance is required, or being sought. The garage is 1 foot 6, 1.5 feet from the property line, to both property lines. It's tucked in the corner. It's 18 inches off the property line to allow for a 1-foot roof overhang and a 5-inch gutter. So it doesn't, it doesn't work at 1 foot, it's 1 foot 6. It doesn't come close to the house in any aspect at all. The second floor deck, which is allowed, is set back 5 feet at this point right here, and because of the skew of the property line, it's 6.5 feet at this point. Right above that, it's planned to have a third floor deck right here. Not on the corner, but set in, an appendage sticking out here, but part of that would go into the house. The 5-foot deck does not fully extend beyond the house. I would say probably at least half of it goes into the structure, into the roof. With respect to the,
Mr. Richard has a question.
yeah,
So the whole width of the deck is 5 feet?
I'm sorry, Mike, I didn't hear you.
The deck coming from the house out is 5 feet total?
It's 5 feet, but at least half of it goes into the
Right, that's
house.
what I'm saying, so it's only sticking 2.5 feet out onto the.
Approximately,
Okay.
yes. I apologize to the board for some of the omissions on the drawings, staff problems, some personal problems that he was having, but I take full responsibility, obviously.
Well, let's just recap for a second, 'cause this is important. I indicated that the portion of the house that requires a variance on the setback from Atlantic is only on a skewed area from one point to another point, not the entire width of the house, correct?
That's correct. Although the skew of the property line is full.
He said at the furthest
full
point, it was
extent.
like 9.9 feet, and you need 10 something, so,
Correct. But it
so
goes-
nothing exceeds 9.9.
That's correct, but it doesn't, it's not as far out the entire length of the house.
Right.
Right.
But the whole length of the house would need a variance anyway, it doesn't
Correct, but
meet
it's
10 feet.
minimal as you go further
Right,
back.
yes.
Right. The setback is 10.6. At one point, it does exceed the required setback. Now, additionally, Don, you had indicated that the third floor deck width at its widest point is 5 feet, but only 2.5 feet of that juts out towards Atlantic Avenue, correct?
That's correct.
And I think on the plan you got there showing the rear elevation, you can see the deck sticking out minimally up top there, correct?
Well, actually, it lines up with it'll line up with the deck below, but half of it sticks out, half of it goes into the house.
But the deck above only sticks out less than half the distance of the deck below.
You can see it on the Mansfield
Oh,
elevation.
it lines-
The
it
Mansfield
lines
condo
up.
elevation, you can see it.
Okay.
With the deck below.
Now, there originally were some other variances that were eliminated, correct? Don? We're eliminating the variance?
We're eliminating the variance for the second floor deck. Part of it, maybe 7 feet of it, was hanging over the water's edge and not 3 feet from the water's edge. But that variance is being withdrawn because the deck is going to be reduced in terms of its depth. So that's moot, it's not going to be a part of this application.
With regard to parking, this application exceeds the required parking for the number of bedrooms, correct?
Correct. The building coverage is allowed to be 1464.48 square feet. The actual building coverage is 1398, so it's well below the allowable in terms of building coverage. The calculations of the size of the third floor are in fact half the size of the second. Third floor area habitable is 627 square feet. The second floor habitable space is 1254, so it's exactly one half. First floor is 1257.8. For some reason, those numbers didn't occur on the drawings because the computer layer was turned off, whatever, but it should have been on there.
As Mr. McLaren noted, regardless of anything else that happens tonight, the plans that ultimately get submitted will have the detail that you requested, and that's required to get a building permit, correct?
That's correct. I ran some calculations in terms of the 60% vegetative coverage, both on Atlantic and also on Mansfield. On Atlantic, 418 square feet is required, and we in fact have 615 square feet. On Mansfield, 319.6 is required. We have 319.6. But on the Atlantic side, we're well under, or well in excess of the required green space in a front yard.
In your professional opinion,
Eric, could you speak into the microphone?
Mr. Zacher, in your professional opinion, do the variances that have been requested by the applicant have any detriment or negative impact on any of the neighbors or the zone plan of the city of Margate or the New Jersey Municipal Land Use Law?
No, I don't believe they do at all. The deck that doesn't encroach on anybody's light or open space or privacy. The configuration of the lot is a little odd in that the property line is skewed. It would be very difficult to design a house that was either stepped in segments or had a splayed front wall parallel to the skewed front property line. So this made the most sense, and also it was very similar to the pre-existing house that was demolished.
Well, that's important. We want to talk about that a little bit. The house that was demolished had basically the same footprint on Atlantic as the house that's being constructed now, correct?
Yes.
With regard to the table that Mr. McLaren included in his report, obviously if the board grants these variances, we will comply with all of the other requirements of the City of Margate zoning code, other than setback from Atlantic, the minimal amount of .007 on the porch to Mansfield, which may have been a calculation error.
De minimis.
And then all the other requests that Mr. McLaren made will be shown on your revised set of plans, correct? Including the correct table with the correct zoning.
Correct, absolutely.
Eric?
Don,
Go ahead.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Just a quick question. You're asking for a lot of variances, okay?
I'm sorry, Tom?
We're asking for a lot of variances here.
2?
Okay, but you have a 1-inch variance on Mansfield Avenue. 1 inch. You couldn't get rid of 1 inch?
That may have been an error, but we will get rid of that. That might be a calculation, yes.
I believe that's going from 8 feet 10 inches to 8.10
Okay.
feet.
I got a question, Eric. Don,
We're not
on the
asking for-
staircase,
Sorry, but
for a
Mr. Collins,
variance for
that's
the
something we
porch
can eliminate.
setback.
It's silly, I agree. And we think it just might be, as Mr. McLaren had pointed out, a transformation error from one metric to another, but that's, yeah,
1 inch.
that's an easy one.
I got a question. On the staircase overhang into the driveway, what's your height of the underside of the overhang? So a car could go underneath of it?
10.5 to 11 feet.
Yeah, because it shows 14 to the middle of it, and then it's hard to figure out if that's, looks lower than that. Why don't you go to the elevation? Go to your elevation.
Something hanging over the driveway.
That's about 6 feet.
Is your question,
A4.
Jim, is your question, what's the distance
No.
from the overhang to the grade?
Over, the stair, your stair encroachment, you have a stair tower, comes out of the
Sheet
building.
A4, Don.
A4. There it is, bottom. See on the bottom, see the driveway, see the garage, the overhang?
There is no stair.
That's a stair,
Oh, it's purely
that's your
an
interior
overhang.
stair. That's your interior stair. Your stair box. I just wanna know what the bottom edge of that is.
Okay.
That's all.
Distance from grade to the bottom of the overhang,
I think it's lower than that, I think it's 7 foot or 6 foot.
7 feet.
Close. Did you say it was initially?
Cars can't go past. If you have an SUV with some luggage on the side, you ain't getting past that. It's right here.
If you look at the elevation, you can see the doors of the garage are at least a foot below the underside of the overhang. So if there's headroom for a car to be able to go into the garage, obviously it would clear the overhang.
If you bring your stair up 1 foot, you would have an 8 foot overhang. Just bring it in. Add one more step to your stair tower. So instead of 7, it'll
We
be
good,
8.
all right,
That's a good idea.
not a problem.
Oh, Jimmy.
Can I ask a question? The deck that you're, the second floor deck that doesn't have a variance, what was the depth of that deck originally? How deep was it? Not wide, deep.
Almost 8 feet.
5 foot. I don't know about the one at the pool.
No, the pool deck.
7 feet 8 inches.
7.5 feet.
And you're taking 5.5 feet off of it?
Yeah, it's gonna be,
So is that
No, that's not a deck, that's the wall of the
the one that
second-
overhung the pool?
That's the wall of the second floor.
The deck that overhung the pool, you're going to cut that back
Oh, we're
5.5
Oh, it's
feet?
gonna be cut back so that it's at least 3 feet from the water's edge.
And is there anything left, or you're going to cut it more into
It's
the
gonna
house?
be, we don't know yet, but it'll be at least 2.5, 3 feet deep.
If you're taking 5.5 feet off of it, what was it to begin with? If it was 7 feet, you have 1.5 feet left for a
No,
deck.
we're not taking 5.5 feet off of it, we're taking it, right now, I think that the deck is 1 foot 4 inches over the water's edge.
I don't think so.
it is, and then you need another 3 feet.
It was 2 feet over.
It is. Water's edge to the edge, but that's being withdrawn as a variance.
My question
Well,
was if there's
what
any
have you
deck,
left?
you're going to leave a deck there, there's going to be a foot wide deck or a 1.5
The
wide?
deck now it's a 6-foot deck. We're taking 3 feet off, in effect, a little less than 3 feet off of its depth, so it'll be a 3-foot deck.
Your plans show it's
You're
a
taking
5 foot.
5.5 feet off the deck.
No, we're not.
Yes, you do.
Taking 3 feet off of it.
Sheet A2
Plus
shows a
3.
deck 5 feet wide. 5 feet deep.
2.4 feet plus 3 feet is 5.4 feet. That you have to make that deck that much smaller.
How far back do we have to go?
3 feet
We have to go 3 feet back?
plus
But
2.4.
that's a plan view of the deck, but only part of it now overhangs into the water's edge.
2.4 feet hangs over the pool.
1 foot 4 inches. Hangs over to in the
It
water's
says
edge.
2 feet 4 inches
Your
hangs
plan
over the
shows 2
deck.
feet 4 inches.
Well, regardless, it'll be cut back so no part of it encroaches into the.
I just
3
didn't know
feet.
how a 1-foot deck, if that's what you were going to end up with. That was
We
my
may
question.
incise it into the house. It's not
Oh,
gonna be.
with that,
be
okay.
chairs.
That answers my question.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
I want to be clear on this before I get another set of plans that will aggravate me. You're overhanging the pool 2 feet 4 inches now on the plan that you provided. 3 feet back from the water's edge is a requirement from the ordinance, so that's 5 feet 4 inches. Your deck on your plan is 5 feet wide.
So we'll probably be incising the deck, if we maintain a deck at all, into the house.
All right?
Understanding your concern, Mr. McLarnon, compliant plans will be submitted with regard to that deck.
It was just your comment that you're still going to have a deck there that raised the issue. I didn't see how you could still have a
It may be
deck.
wider, but it won't be any closer to the pool. The way it will be wider is to have that.
Push it
cut
into the house.
That's correct.
I just wanted that clear, that that's what has to be done.
I'll be impressed.
Whenever you're ready.
I'm ready.
I just had a question, if we can go to, it's the Atlantic Avenue elevation, the side view there. It's got the Mansfield Ave on the bottom. When we're looking at the Atlantic Ave elevation, the only problem I have is that's the focal point, that's what everyone's gonna be driving by, and we're looking at the side of a garage, a door, and I don't know exactly what's going on. Is there
Excuse me,
an
the garage is
exit?
set way back.
And there'll be a fence. So
There'll
you
be a
really won't see
fence.
anything other than landscaping and the fence.
Well, we have-
Because there'll be a pool.
Bushes there, what are we gonna say? Because I know
You'll
we're
see a
about 7.5 feet
even
back.
From the street, you'll see a 5-foot high fence, landscaping in front of it.
And then once we get past the garage, or the fence of the
Garage is set way back.
And that garage will be all the way over on Mansfield, so that garage would be, here from Atlantic, we first have to go through 10 feet to the property where the fence is, then the pool, then the garage on the other side. I would proffer to say you wouldn't even see the garage on the Atlantic Avenue side, because it'd be landscaping, fence, pool, and then garage.
Okay, so we have that landscaping on the outer side. And then, okay, so I'm fine past the garage. Once we get to the home, is there any landscaping at that
On the Atlantic
area?
Avenue side?
On the Atlantic Avenue
Absolutely,
side in
yes.
front of the home?
There'll be landscaping for the ordinance, maybe even some more, the entire extent along Atlantic Avenue.
Is there a walkway there? Because that's an exit from the home, isn't it? Is that a step down? Is that a back entrance?
Sidewalk, and there are steps here that go down to a landing and then go perpendicular to Atlantic Avenue.
Okay. And how is that gonna work out? Because it's just difficult to see here in the plans, and I
Well,
don't have any other
There'll be
views of it.
landscaping to the right of it, interrupted by the steps themselves, 3.5 feet wide.
And are we coming down into grass or into the public right away there? What are we coming down to?
No, it
That's
doesn't.
inside the yard still, that's
Inside
grass.
the yard, so
It's-
just grass, you're stepping
Correct.
down into
It's not
grass?
in the public right
Yeah.
away there.
Okay.
One quick question, the pool deck and the patio around it, is that grade?
The pool decking will be some sort of pavers.
It'll be at grade, though,
At
existing grade?
On grade,
Okay.
correct.
This is Mansfield, so the garage is,
Howard,
Yes.
the third floor deck,
that'll be on Mansfield, back off of Atlantic Avenue.
you mentioned that across the street, beach bar, you're allowed to have, okay, but that's really not a justification. What is your justification for the third floor deck?
Ocean views, light
You
air.
can't see the ocean from
You can see the ocean from there, I think. You're that high?
You're going to see over top of all the beachfront property?
Well, from that, you know what, we were out there and taking a look at what we believe to be the angle, the light air and open space, you'll have some views, look, will you have a great view of the ocean? Probably not, but you will still have, you'll have views, that doesn't have to be a view of the ocean.
Can that be a condition?
That they'll have ocean views? I'm sure the Milgrams would love to have a condition that they must have ocean views.
That's your total justification
Look,
for it?
it's a justification of light air and open space. Yeah.
Light air and open space.
It
What's that
increases the light, air, and open space. You do have another means of ingress and egress. In the event of an emergency, you could still have emergency personnel up to the third floor deck for hopefully what never has to happen with someone coming out of the house.
And
couldn't
it
go
doesn't
down.
affect anybody's privacy because it's not looking over into another property. It's far enough away that it doesn't really impinge on anyone else's privacy.
All right.
I would
So,
say in that
uh,
respect, the positives would certainly outweigh the negatives, negatives being none. You've got a deck on the third floor, the only negative is, it's not allowed in your ordinance, but if it were across the street, it would be allowed. Even if it was across the street on a house on Atlantic facing the bay, it would still be allowed. So in that regard, you're really talking about decks facing each other across the street, one is allowed, one's not. It just happenstance that the
And we
ordinance.
just extended it from the beach to Atlantic Avenue, that side of Atlantic Avenue, not the other side.
Correct.
It really means nothing that there's a deck on the other side of this.
Only that the proximity to this deck, if it were a stone's throw away, wouldn't be an issue. It's just like anything else. You're in one zoning district, you can do X, in another zoning district, you can do Y. It's, fortunate or unfortunate that this house just happens to be across the street.
That argument, if it held water, it could have ramifications throughout the city with every item in the
But I think that's
ordinance.
always the case. We're always talking about inches. We're not talking about someone coming in saying, I want 10 feet of additional height, or I want fourth floor decks or a rooftop deck. Everything with regard to the design lately is, what can we get to squeeze in just a little more to make our beach house a little bit nicer? This isn't a spec house. This isn't to increase the value for some third party. This is something, and Mrs. Milgram's going to testify, that she wants to have a legacy for herself or her family that she can keep in the family for a very long time. And that third floor deck does give them a slightly nicer house. And that's just a design aspect that everyone wants to have the nicest house possible. And I know a lot of times we come here and we talk about what justifications exist for, getting a raw piece of land and going for variances for a pool that's closer to the property line, or, a house that sticks out a little further. And it's just to have a better design, a nicer property. In this case, there actually is a bit of a hardship because of the shape of the lot. Third floor
Half
deck.
of the deck is inside into the house, so half of it's out, half of it's in.
I don't see it that way.
The outer edge of it will line up with the second floor deck. The depth of the second floor deck is a little tad more than 5 feet. So if there's a deck here, half of it is out and half of it is in
Just into the roof.
the root structure.
Just into the roof, not in.
Pardon me?
Just into the roof, not into the body of the house.
But it's not, and it's sticking out 5 feet.
It's not just cantilevered in, so you have the deck coming out onto Atlantic, and it doesn't encroach onto any of the setbacks. It's basically out just enough to give them room for a chair to sit up there, and, you know, I do believe they'll have some good views from up there.
Anything else?
I just want to make sure Mr. McLaren's satisfied with the testimony, because he did discuss with me earlier today, this was going to be a more testimony-heavy case than the document-heavy case. So, Mr. McLaren, are your concerns regarding everything other than the variances, as well as the request for the third-floor deck in the house to be slightly closer, satisfied, taking Mr. Collins' comment into consideration that that other variance would be eliminated based upon the 1-inch change?
Yes, again, the 7/100ths of 1 inch could be eliminated to eliminate that variance. Again, I want the floor areas on all the plans shown, and again, the testimony provided that they do comply. It still has to go through another layer of review through my office and Jim's office, so that will weed out any other issues that we may find. I think the board members may need a little bit more testimony in regard to the positive and negative criteria for this third floor deck. In my opinion, just an observation to suit your argument, it would have been, maybe it would have been better suited to move that deck closer to the corner to utilize that corridor view. I mean, it's off of one bedroom. It could be easily moved to another bedroom. I understand why you did it, because there's another deck below it, and you usually just have a tiered deck. I get that. But I think for your argument, I think Don may want to discuss further.
Putting it in a place where you can actually see the ocean.
If that's your argument.
And
Yes.
Mrs. Milgram's here. I think it might be a good idea for her to testify now.
Okay.
As well. Marla?
State your name and address for the record, and I'll swear you in.
Hi, Marla Milgram, hopefully 12 South Mansfield.
And do you swear affirm the testimony you're about to give with the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Thanks.
Marla, you've been here listening to what's going on. You're
Yes.
obviously concerned about the status of your plans, and you told me today it's got to all be done correctly. There can't be any more mistakes. There can't be anything submitted which isn't 100%. And you've taken that
Absolutely.
very much into consideration, as the board is, and they were very nice enough to let us go forward because you came down specifically for this. But you've also heard their concerns. Why don't you tell the board exactly what you're trying to do here and why the house was designed the way it was?
Sure. First of all, thank you for hearing us tonight. I'm an attorney, so I am hyper vigilant that everything is going to be done to code. My family, for the past 4 generations, has owned property in Margate and Ventnor. It's always been a dream of mine to own a place since my great-grandparents. And so we looked for 2 years for property. We found this parcel that was originally supposed to be a spec house. When we looked at the plans, we determined that what they proposed for Atlantic Avenue was very bland. It was a big blank side of a wall. We didn't think it was nice enough for the Parkway section, so we hired Mr. Zacher to do what we thought was a more quality job that would be a property to be that we'd be proud to own in the Parkway section. We spent a lot of time designing it. The explanation for the third floor deck is sort of simple. We have 2 daughters, so we had to do equal for both daughters. One daughter has the front room, which is what we're calling the tower. You'll see which faces Mansfield. the second bedroom, which is back farther, we had to come up with a special thing for a 16-year-old. So we thought maybe a deck on that. She likes looking at the sunsets. She likes looking at the skyline. So
Sunset's the other one.
wrong side. Sunrise. So we pitched that to her as you'll have good views of the skyline as well. That's why we didn't put it more forward, because we had to have one special feature for each bedroom for the girls. With regard to the landscaping, my hobby is gardening, so I should have brought a picture of our house in Philadelphia, but that's one thing that makes me very proud of my property, is to make sure it's beautiful. It's my hobby to garden, so I can assure you that whatever the minimum plants that will be there, it will be much nicer than what's required.
And I want to just talk about the design of the house. When you talked to Mr. Zacher, before the house was demolished, it had a certain footprint. You wanted to kind of stick with that footprint, correct?
Mm-hmm.
And we talked about coming before the board and the fact that the minimum is 5 feet from the property line, and you said you didn't want to go out that far. You wanted to be consistent with what was there before, correct?
Right, absolutely.
And that's what we designed. Okay, I'm sorry.
We're not trying to build an oversized house and squeeze it on a lot with the absolute minimum that we can get away with. We're not trying to do that. We're trying to make a beautiful home that we're going to have for generations. Hopefully I'll have grandchildren one day and they will come, and that's really the plan, was to build a home with a lot of thought. We went back and forth with Mr. Zacher, endless details to try to make something that was pleasing on both sides, both on Mansfield and on Atlantic, that it wasn't just pretty on Mansfield and Atlantic was left as a side thought.
And we talked about that a little bit too. I told you how important it is for the board. They don't want to see just a through street to have, siding along the side. They
Right.
wanted to have some architectural design and relief, and you directed Mr. Zacher to do that as well, correct?
Right, we also made, it's a wraparound porch. We made sure that we had staircase on both sides to be more welcoming from Atlantic as well as Mansfield. And we tried to keep the design balanced so that where there were railings for balconies, it appears to be balanced and welcoming. The neighbors on Mansfield are the people who sold us the property. They're in favor of our design. We've been discussing with them and sharing with them because of, they're our next door neighbors, so we want to be good neighbors. What else?
Unless the board has questions. for
Any
you.
questions?
I have a question, just a clarification.
Sure.
So, from what I've just heard from you, you're basically saying that your justification for the third floor deck is because it's on a corner Atlantic Avenue property, and you're trying to break it up besides your daughters, and add an aesthetic feature to it because it's Atlantic Avenue.
That's true. We're trying to, we had the second floor deck, we're trying to balance out the design and make the whole thing more aesthetic.
So it ties it all together,
Sure.
you're not looking at a bland wall or a garage door or something like that.
That's why we ditched the first architect, because that is exactly what they were gonna build, this, with the spec builder.
As long as, I just want to get clear, so.
Sure, sure.
So it sounds like you put a lot of thought into it. So, and I'm looking at the architecturals, the elevations. If you're walking down a sidewalk, Atlantic Avenue on the same side of the street, all what you're really going to see is the top portion of the railing, because it's going to be in the roof. It's almost like a pent roof on the sides. My observation is it's not going to be very blatant. And I was thinking, what would it look if you had a pent roof around the front, but that's going to interfere with the round roof that you have above the entrance. I think that's a strong architectural feature you want to maintain. I'm just talking out loud.
No, again, no, my grandparents lived on Osborne Avenue, so I've been for my whole childhood aware of the appearance of the Parkway section. And we're hyper sensitive to making a house that's beautiful and that fits in and that, makes everybody else proud that there's a house there. We're not just.
And so the board understands, and you're obviously concerned about this, and everyone I'm sure is. the house across the street from you is maybe not in the greatest state of repair and has been in a situation of, again, I'm getting my grief.
It's been being repaired for 20 years, I
It's been
think.
under construction probably forever, and it probably will continue.
Yeah.
Notwithstanding that fact, you still wanted something that blended in a little bit better and didn't want to go out further, because that house will block your view down Atlantic, because it sticks out so far, and it's such an
Right.
odd design.
Right, yeah, we won't have a view because of that house. That will block, but
We can't do anything
we
about it.
can't help that house, so. We tried to design something that we would be proud of.
Unless the board has further questions for the applicant herself,
Are you done?
yeah, we're done.
Anything else from the board? Anyone here from the public have any comments, questions? Come up and please be sworn in. State your name first and then be sworn in.
Arlene Gottschall at 8605 Atlantic Avenue.
Do you swear affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
You know, I live at 8605 Atlantic, as I said, and
Where's that in relation to this house?
right next door.
On
I'm on Atlantic and Nassau,
Atlantic, okay.
so the house is right next door to
Got
me.
it.
And, you know, I just thought, it appears, you know, I'm concerned with the house that's gone in. It seems like it's too big for the lot. I'm concerned with the third floor deck that they're talking, that, you know, they're going for a variance for. And, the pool, I didn't know if that was too close to my party line.
It's not.
It's not, but I just want to be on record with
Right.
it. And also the garage to the property line. And I know that's in compliance. The second floor decks had me concerned because that was more, to me, a privacy problem.
Problem with that, I understand,
Because-
there's no variance, so there's nothing we can do about it.
Right, but that was just a privacy thing for me
Right.
because they, you know, their back is my yard.
Right.
And they're looking into my bedrooms, my bathrooms, my kitchen, my den. And, you know, that was my concern there. And, you know, when they're on their pool and decks, then they're looking down on my yard when I have my family and friends and, you know, I'm out there sunbathing or whatever. There's no, you know, that was just my privacy, for privacy. And,
The pool's at ground level though, right? Okay, I'm sorry. I'm just
yeah, the
clarifying.
pool, yeah, but the,
Okay,
you know,
the
the
deck.
decks, the
Yes.
bedrooms, I guess, with the decks up
Right.
there. And, you know, I didn't know if that was allowed or not. And, you know, that was, you know, if it was too close to the garage, but I guess that was, they're all in compliance with that. My concern is the third floor deck. You know, that is in, you know, that's not what I thought was, you know, I didn't think that that was permitted to do on Atlantic Avenue. I know beach, I thought it was just for the beach, but I guess this is
Beach block.
beach block now.
Right.
And, and the plans on Atlantic Avenue, that wasn't clear. You know, I mean, to come out, I thought it had to be in compliance with my house for this, you know, the scape of the setback on Atlantic Avenue to coincide with the
The
scape of
rule
my
is
house.
house is 200 feet in each direction. In this case, yours is the only house.
Right,
That creates a hardship because you could be set back 50 feet and then they would have to be set back
Right.
50 feet. But that's where we have a lot of variances when there's no houses to compare it to and you only have one house and you're
Right.
stuck with that item. So that comes before the board quite a bit when there's only one house to compare it with.
right. And that was my understanding.
Right.
How to comply. And the garage, if there was enough parking, because there is a parking situation
Right.
on Atlantic Avenue.
Well, again, that's
And
not a
the
variance.
pool,
There is
yeah.
enough parking.
But the pool, all the pool stuff is going into the garage?
Inside the garage, so you won't hear anything.
Right, okay. And just the size of the garage and if they could do that. And And that's really basically, the deck and the Atlantic Avenue. And the deck's in the back, but if they're bringing them in, I mean, they can't do anything. It's just a privacy thing
Right.
on my part, so.
All right, well, thank you for
Okay,
your comments.
thank you.
Anyone else? State your name and be sworn in, please.
Yeah. My name's Frank Murphy. I'm at 8605 Winchester Avenue. Okay?
Mr. Murphy, do you swear affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thanks.
Okay. I'm a relative of Arlene's, okay, and I was asked to look over the plans at the whole thing, and I'm not an engineer, I'm not an architect, but I could not understand a lot of the details on the plans. So I'd be sort of like, I was at a loss to try to interpret them for Arlene, okay? So I'd like you to take that in consideration and get some decent plans in place. You know?
Well, if you sat here, we all had problems with the plan, so.
Okay, all right, so I would just like to see that whole thing. And one other thing, you talk about the scope of the house being the same footprint as the old house. The old house looked like something that belonged in the Poconos, okay, and it was a rancher, okay? This is a beautiful house, I admit, but it is a big, big house. So it's going to change the whole Atlantic Avenue picture and everything else. And I think it should be taken into consideration. And especially if Arlene can get a full view of Atlantic Avenue, which she's had for the last 40 years. So that's all I had.
Thank you.
So I just want to clarify, reiterate, you're meeting the building coverage requirements.
That's correct.
You're not here seeking a height variance.
No. The good thing is, and I don't want to cut you off, I want to applaud that gentleman. He said she wants what she had. She's going to get that. Same exact footprint down Atlantic Avenue. So that's good that they didn't come out any further. Well, that's allowed. What are you going to do? I mean, that's 2.5 stories. But, we're talking about same footprint. House will be in the same place. It'll just be bigger.
Well, actually, the proposed house is about 20 feet further away from her house.
I agree. It seems like a win-win. And the plans, he's correct. I mean, the plans aren't great. We're going to have new plans submitted. They're obviously going to be reviewable, so when they come in, anybody can come to City Hall and take a look. And if you like, we can even get a set delivered to you. I mean, we're not trying to hide the ball here. If you want to see the plan, we'll get a good set for you. No, it's good. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Anyone else in the public? Public portion's closed. Anything else from the board? Any other questions?
To maybe alleviate some of the concern about her privacy on her side, it looks like there's room along that side yard fence to put some arborvitae's or something
Oh, absolutely.
that will grow higher than a
Arborvitae,
fence and give her some
cypress.
privacy.
That would give her additional privacy, of course.
And the height of the fence, you can go 5 or 6.
We're not 100% sure. We won't be any lower than 5 and no higher than 6, which,
Okay.
I'll ask, would you prefer a slightly higher fence or slightly lower fence? 6?
Next to the pool.
6-foot high fence is fine.
Okay.
That'll give you an extra foot up. So as a condition, if Mr. Manos wants to include that, Mrs. Milgram said a 6-foot high fence would be
Okay.
fine.
You said about arborvitae's?
That way, at least, if someone's standing on the pool deck, I understand the neighbor's concern that a 6-foot high person would be over a 5-foot high fence. Now you're gonna have a 6-foot high fence and arborvitae's. It's a fair amount of privacy in an area where it's tight already. Okay with that?
But if there was landscape screening, you wouldn't want to extend out where it would obstruct our view down Atlantic.
Just where the
by the
pool is.
pool is.
Just
yeah.
by the pool. We wouldn't do it
Yeah.
on, because obviously the view's important.
Right.
We wouldn't do it, anything to block on Atlantic.
Okay, could you read that motion?
Sure, someone needs to make a motion for C variance relief for a front yard setback to the building along Atlantic Avenue of 7.83 feet, where 10.6 feet is required, and to permit a third-floor deck where one is not permitted at this location. The other two variances from the side yard, the clearance to the pool, to the vertical structure. That's going to go away, as is the front yard setback along Mansfield Avenue, so there's no variance relief requested for those. There's also a waiver from the submission of an area map within 200 feet. And the conditions will be that the applicant will submit revised plans with all detail that Mr. McLaren has requested and as represented by the applicant during the course of the hearing. They'll create that 8-foot overhang by adding a step as alluded to by as requested by Mr. Galantino and agreed to by the applicant. The fence up by the pool will be 6 feet high, and they'll also provide landscape screening along that side where the pool is. And that's the motion.
Leo, before the motion, is it a split for the third floor deck, or is it proceeding as one vote?
The applicant has not requested a split for the third floor deck. There's no variance for the second floor deck. They're going to make that comply somehow.
Or eliminate.
Or eliminate the deck altogether.
When it gets reviewed by,
They withdrew the variance. They're going to get rid of that deck.
If it's not compliance, it's not going to get approved. I mean, the condition is, it's not a condition. There's no variance request for that second floor deck over the pool, so if it doesn't comply, they can't do it.
So we won't be on the plans, otherwise Mr. McLaren and Mr. Galantino won't sign off.
Exactly. And the other conditions will be everything set forth in the report of December 19th, 2018, of Mr. McLaren, and all representations made by the applicant during the course of the hearing.
And again, Mr. McLaren was very helpful with regard to getting us here tonight. Mrs. Milgram obviously appreciates that. So the detail on the plans that are necessary will be shown 100%. And if anybody wants to, I'll even let the neighbors know when we submit so they can come look as well.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
Tom made it and Clem second.
Tom Collins?
Unfortunately, Eric, as you know, I am not a proponent of third floor decks. On the ocean, on the bay, not a problem. This case is a little bit different because it is the Parkway section, because it is a corner piece on Atlantic Avenue. I think the aesthetics and the minimus size of it really outweigh any detriment that it would be. I think it's going to actually be a plus for the neighborhood and a plus for developing in the future. I don't think it's going to be used very much, especially by a 16-year-old girl. She's going to be down at the pool or on the beach. Other than that, I remember the house that was there. This is going to be a massive, massive improvement. It fits what we're looking to do in Margate. Except for calculations, I think Don did a pretty good job. The house is really going to be pretty. And your testimony meant more than you would believe, because your landscaping, the way you talked, I could tell you were talking from your heart, and I really believed you. You're not just trying to sell us on something. And I wish you a lot of luck. I vote in favor.
Clem Osleski?
The only problem I have with it is the third floor deck. I go along with Tom usually on disagreeing with those, but doesn't seem the other board members have the same concerns that I do. If we wanted third floor decks, we'd allow them. Neighbor doesn't like the idea of it either. But, I don't think it's going to be used. I think it's a waste. All the other aspects of the project, where they're asking variances, are viable. I'm very pleased that they got rid of that hazard over top of the pool. Sooner or later, someone was going to go off of that. We all know it. But because of the minimum impact of that third floor deck, I'll vote in favor of the project.
Rich Patterson?
I know I was critical of the architect tonight, but I would like to say with hearing the applicant's testimony and what she wanted and what he produced is something the board is always looking for. On a corner lot, to have a house that looks like it fronts both streets. And I think Mr. Zacher did a great job of that, and I appreciate your wanting it that way. I think I let my agitation show through about the third floor deck because we have to look at each house individually, and here it is right across from where we just allowed them and nothing was further. But if I look at this one individually, and it's facing Atlantic Avenue, and it's not facing anybody else's yards, and it's cut back into the house, I will vote yes on the application.
Mike Cristaldi?
I agree with the other board members as far as the house facing both streets and still doing some really good architecture on it. I think I agree with that. And I agree with Clem on the third floor deck. I think it will be used for the air show mostly. Other than that, I don't see it being used. And I got this knucklehead that sits next to me that keeps telling me about firemen and trying to carry a guy down a ladder from a third floor. Window. So I vote in favor of the project.
Jim Galantino?
When I heard there was a demolition on Mansfield Atlantic Avenue, I was applauding it, and I thought they were going to tear the house across the street down, and they tore your house down, which either one could have gone. I fought with both of them. So, I mean, those shutters that were on the windows, they were insane, weren't they? The black shutters that they used to put up in the summer. That was the house. I don't have a problem with the third floor deck if it came out and became more of like the second floor deck, then I would have had a problem with the third floor deck. I think your attorney did a good job of explaining that. So, and Mrs. Goshaw, I don't think that third floor deck's going to be a problem with them looking into your yard. I'll make sure that they don't look in your yard. I vote yes.
Margaret Gubernalty?
I agree with the other board members. I'm glad that the coverage is below what is allowed. The third floor deck, I agree with Mr. Patterson in that I think we have to look at them individually, each case, and I know everyone does want a third floor deck. I think aesthetically it fits into this house, and I understand the neighbors' concerns. There was a small rancher there, and now there's a larger home being put there. Same footprint, obviously. So I understand that, and I think that's why we were concerned about putting the trees and fences there so that aesthetically it would keep the neighborhood and improve your house as well. So I think we tried to make that work. I vote in favor of the application as well.
Mike Richmond?
I just want to add something to my comments. I know it doesn't make any difference. I already voted yes. But as far as the setback on Atlantic Avenue where it's actually short, to me, a compensating difference was, and again, the architect put in way more landscaping than was required, even though they're not set back enough. So I think that's a consideration when the setback's not far enough that you have excess vegetation there. Go ahead.
Mike Richmond?
I have two daughters, so I understand that hardship. I think that there was a lot of thought put into this house. I see some of the other things being built on Ventnor Avenue and the Parkway, and they're just spec houses. So this is a really nice design. I think it's going to enhance the neighborhood, and I'm going to vote in favor of it.
Application passes 7-0.
Next case is MBNN1 LLC, 8607 Amherst Avenue, Block 616, Lot 34, in the S40 district to grant C variance relief for building height, building coverage, and possibly others. Taxes and water are current, and proof of advertising and notifying is satisfied. Mr. McLarnin? Pardon me? Mrs. Gubernali is recusing herself from this case.
Okay. Thank you, Mr.
Everyone should have received a new set of plans that are signed and sealed for this application, if you don't.
Signed and sealed by Keith Reeland Jr., New Jersey architect.
Is that what this is?
Yes.
Instead of this one?
It's the same.
All right.
Thank you, Board Chairman, Board members. My report is based on the application of MBNN1 LLC, 8607 Amherst Avenue, Block 616, Lot 34. It's within the newly created S40WF district, meaning nothing has changed except a couple letters at the end of the zone. The applicant is seeking relief from the ordinances of the City of Margate in order to construct a new peaked roof, meeting the minimum roof pitch requirements to replace a flat roof on a lagoon front, which is Orient Canal home within the S40 WF zone. The height of the top portion of the peak is above the maximum height allowed based on distance from the finished first floor. I've identified 3 variances. 2 of them are just a function of increasing the wall space. So the variances required are as follows. Side yard setback, whereas a required minimum combined or side yard setback is 8 feet, 4.83 feet exists, and 4.83 feet is proposed. Again, because you're increasing the wall height of the roof, it's an expansion of a non-conforming setback. And it's just for that little jog in the, at the right corner lot at the top. As a function of that, the combined side yard setback is not being met, whereas the required minimum combined side yard setback is 18.5 feet, 17.83 feet, and 4.83 feet exist and are proposed. So we're shy about 7/10 of a foot. And for the main reason that they're here is the building height, whereas the required maximum building height from an existing finished floor elevation is 28 feet, or 30 feet with exceptions, and less than 28 feet exists, and 32.67 feet is proposed. Again, this is a C variance as it's less than 10% or 10 feet in height. My comments are as follows. The side yard setback and combined side yard setbacks do not meet the required minimum due to the expansion of a non-existing deficiencies of the side yard setback. I do have a question that I want to ask in a little bit. That's my comment number 2 about the 5 by 5 foot parcel. The height variance is caused by the construction of the peak roof from a flat roof in order to meet the minimum roof pitch requirements. However, if the house were to be rebuilt with a garage below the structure as permitted by ordinance, the structure could be at least 5 feet higher than what the variance relief is being requested. Again, the height is based on the finished first floor where it is. No waivers are being requested. A CAF permit may be required, but I don't think it is. The conditions are being met to allow 30 feet of height versus 28 feet of height. So they're meeting the exceptions. Going back to the question I have about the 5 by 5 foot parcel. Again, I read it as not being relevant to this application, but apparently it could have an effect on the side yard setback. One of the neighbors came in and said that they purchased a 5 by 5 foot parcel of this land, and it's not showing up on the survey. And there was never a subdivision done. So I don't know if it's an easement or if it's relevant.
Mr. McLaren, we can address that, and we will address that as the application goes forward.
Okay.
Yeah.
that concludes my report at this time, and I would like to comment further as needed.
Chairman? Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Eric Goldstein on behalf of the applicant, MBNN1 LLC. Just to follow up on something Mr. McLaren said, and we spoke about this earlier, under your new ordinance, if this house were built from scratch, the garage would be underneath. The house itself could be a total of 8 feet higher than what we're requesting it to be now. We're going up in order to renovate the property. I'm sure you've all been by. It's in fairly poor condition, and it needs a substantial amount of work. If the house were demoed, it would be greatly in excess of the height that we're asking for tonight, which is very important to us, that we're staying still relatively low in comparison to how high we could go. The issue is the roof itself doesn't currently comply with your ordinance. Any work we would do would need a variance for a flat roof, which we're not looking for. We're not adding any additional habitable space other than to change the pitch to make the house a little bit more appealing, and this is what the conditions look like now. It's kind of your standard, older, we call them like the Miami Vice style houses, although this one was built even worse, built worse because, as you can see, I'm sure you've all been by, it's bad. What they're proposing, what they're willing to testify to, is simply to renovate the entire structure from the skin in and change the roof so that the pitch complies. And if you look at this area here that's shaded, that's what we're looking for. That area goes to 32 feet 8 inches over the finished first floor, which is 2 feet 8 inches higher than is allowed. Aside from that, the other variances that are requested are only a pertinent variance that comes from raising it up. We're obviously staying within the footprint. The footprint itself doesn't comply 100%, so any increase here obviously requires an increase in a variance from the footprint. Mr. Freeland will testify to that in a minute. In addition to that, Mr. Bechtel, who's with me as the owner of the LLC, can discuss the issues related to the alleged, I don't know, we're calling it an illegal subdivision or an alleged sale of property that wasn't permitted, where a deck was built on the property owned by the current owners. All of this was done with the predecessor owner, who unfortunately has since passed. So having said that by way of background, Mr. Vreeland is a licensed architect in the state of New Jersey. He has signed and sealed the plans in front of all of you, and I would like to have him sworn and testify. And if you would like to have his credentials, Mr. Chairman, I can also get those.
Yeah, I haven't seen him.
Okay.
Sure, just,
Mr. Vreeland, be sworn in by Mr.
you
Manos.
can just state your name and business address, and I'll swear you in.
Keith Vreeland, registered architect, state of New Jersey. Address is 341 Bay Avenue, Tuckerton, New Jersey.
And you swear affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
So help me God.
Mr. Vreeland, I know we've talked about this in the past, but please explain to the board, you have been licensed as an architect in the state of New Jersey for how long?
Since 2008.
Okay. And you maintain your own office and you prepare plans on your own?
Yes, sir.
Where were you educated?
I was educated, I did my undergraduate work at Spring Garden College in Philadelphia and my master's at NJIT in Newark.
Mr. Chairman, I would ask him to be accepted as an
Yes,
expert in the
accept.
field of architecture. Thank you. All right, Mr. Vreeland, if you just could walk us through the plan I kind of summarized, but give a little more detail as to what we're looking to do and how this plan fits within the zone code of the city of Margate and the New Jersey Municipal Land Use Law.
Right. If we look at the existing plan, the front elevation, it's essentially that look right now, and we're proposing to add the peaked roof at the rear. This pitched roof here currently exists. We're going to extend the roof over top of the existing stair tower. So all we're asking for is to raise the roof and continue the pitch as it is, and then complying with your ordinance for your general design standards to maintain the pitched roof. The homes on either side along this street all have gable or pitched roofs. So this would be more in keeping with the style of the homes in the area.
The streetscape along Amherst Avenue, most of the homes, at least close to this one, have roofs that are pitched as opposed to flat, correct?
Yes, sir.
And you're aware that Margate does not permit flat roofs in this particular zone, correct?
Yes, sir.
So the work that's being done by the applicants, even if they were to do something not having to do with the roof being flat would also be a variance.
Correct.
We're eliminating that flat roof, going to a pitch roof. Is there any change to the interior dimension of the property? Are you adding any additional space to the third floor?
No, sir.
Are you adding any additional habitable space anywhere in this building?
No,
Aside from the pitch roof, is there any other change to the structure architecturally?
No, sir.
Ladies and gentlemen, there's really not much more with regard to the roof itself. Mr. Bechtel can testify as to what they're doing on the inside and the work that they're going to do on the outside facing the canal. But
What's the improvements assessed at now?
$362,000.
And this would be less than half of that?
It'll be less than half. Mr. Bechtel actually has a budget that I'm sure Mr. Galantino will look at prior to granting permits, but we're close, but we're under. And he's certainly aware of what we can and can't do because the house is low based on the base flood elevation.
Was this house flooded in Sandy? I don't think, you have the garage underneath now.
It was here during Sandy.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, well, the garage is underneath. It couldn't have been. It wasn't that high.
Water came pretty high in that area.
I live in that area. I know it can, but it wasn't 6 feet over the bay, so. Is there any part inside the house that's lower than the roof of the garage, or is that the roof of the garage the first floor level?
No, the first floor level is actually adjacent here. It's almost midpoint of the garage door.
Okay.
It's not a great design on the inside.
Right.
It's fairly poor.
Are you changing all the siding on the house too?
It'll be a full skinning, and Mr. Bechtel's going to testify to that as to the actual work. A lot of the work's mostly it's been the demo to start now. The house is in very poor condition. Unless the board has any further questions for Mr. Vreeland, I'd like to have Mr. Bechtel sworn and he can testify. Mike?
Thank you.
Mr. Bechtel, if you don't mind, please, Mr. Manos will swear you in.
Sure, just state your name and address for the record.
Mike Bechtel, I live in 6 Alberta in Brigantine, New Jersey, and then this is obviously 8607 Amherst Avenue.
And that's B-E, can you spell it? I'm sorry.
B as in boy, E-C-K-T-E-L.
Okay, and do you swear affirm the testimony you're about to give with the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
Mr. Bechtel, you are a representative and the sole managing member of MBNN1 LLC, correct?
That's correct.
And basically, you're the guy who's going to be doing most of the renovation work on this project, right?
My partner, Nico, will be doing most of the renovation, but I will be keeping a watchful eye.
All right. Please walk us through exactly what you're attempting to do, status of the property, and the fact that you're not increasing anything on the house other than that shaded red section triangle on the top right corner of the board there.
Sure. Yeah, I think you did a pretty good job laying out what we're doing with the exterior. We're not trying to move any mountains with the exterior. We just want to make it a pitched roof. The current flat roof not only is aesthetically relatively displeasing, but it's somewhat problematic. We would absolutely need to get a new, at least flat, TPO roof up there if we were to do anything at all. We're having some water damage. We believe that, pitching the roof will improve the exterior of the property, put the property in keeping with the general aesthetic of the neighborhood, but also for the future owners as we are investors and plan to sell this. I think it'll be lower maintenance for them, hopefully on an ongoing basis.
You've been on the roof. I've seen pictures you've taken from the roof. And there are other structures where if you stand on the roof that have higher roofs than this, correct?
Yes, that's correct. Our neighbors to the south in particular are about 8 or 9 feet above us. It looks just, without a measuring tape.
You've been on the roof, it's flat, it's flooded, it's damaged, correct?
Yeah, it's not in good shape.
And that's a function of maybe a couple things, the age of the roof, but also the fact that it's flat, it's directly on the water, storms come in, it doesn't really do very well when there's nowhere for the water to run, correct?
That's correct. I mean, the bones of the building, I think, are fine. As my attorney pointed out, architecturally, it's not the most pleasing thing out there, but I think our plans will greatly improve the aesthetics and the interior as well. I think we have a good plan to have a nice open floor plan, keep a light, airy feel. I think there's some great improvements we can make to the property.
With regard to the decks along the back that face the canal, you're not increasing anything that would require any additional variances, correct?
That's correct.
You're not doing anything on the front of the house that would require any additional variances to change the footprint, correct?
That's correct.
You're not doing anything on either side that would cause the neighbors to have your new construction get closer to their house than it currently exists, correct?
No, that's correct.
Simply changing the pitch of the roof, which requires it to go up because the structure is built the way it is.
I do want to point something out, because I feel like it may come up, and perhaps that's what you wanted to discuss as well. But the condensers are currently on the flat roof, and we will need to move those to the side of the building. That's reflected in the plans also. So I know I'm under oath here, and yeah, I watched the Kavanaugh hearings. I don't want to get myself in any hot water, so you know, we are going to be moving the condensers to the side of the building. So that is something that's not currently there that we do plan on having there.
Without any variances needed?
I don't believe that they require a variance.
Okay.
Okay.
Is there docks on this property?
We have, I'm sorry, I missed your question.
Is there, go ahead, you go for it.
Yes. So my attorney was asking if we could encase the condensers, which we absolutely plan on doing.
Is there docks on this property?
There are. We need to redeck them.
That was my, and the bulkhead, is the bulkhead okay?
The bulkhead looks pretty good. It's the old wood bulkhead, but there's you know, no significant damage. We don't need to repair the bulkhead.
Okay, and just redeck the docks?
That's right.
The pilings are okay?
The pilings are there. They're not thinned out.
Okay.
So we just need to redeck, and we're going to redeck the back as well.
Mr. Bechtel did indicate that to the extent the board wants to consider granting these variances, one of the conditions would be encasing the condensers in a sound deadening fence. We know that that's been successful in a lot of other properties, and it works well to stop the noise from coming out. So that's something you would absolutely include as a condition of approval.
Eric, that's on the plans.
Sound deadening on the plan?
Screening. Not sound deadening, but the
Well,
lattice screening.
We would go even a step further. You know, they do the thing where they put the rubber on the inside of the fence and they kind of close it up. It works pretty well. Unless the board has any further questions, we think that this is kind of a de minimis variance. Unfortunately, we do have to come in. We're here for, you know, anyone to ask the applicant, but we feel like, obviously here, the benefits of changing this relatively bad structure into what we're proposing far outweigh any detriment or any kind of negative impact.
Eric, just put it on record, the shower stall is going to be installed next to the condenser units.
That's correct. Without the details of the plans in front of me, I guess I can walk over here and look. I believe the shower stall will only come out what looks to be less than 2 feet outside of where the condenser will be.
So the requirement is a 3-foot setback from the property line, but where in proportion of on the property itself? Is it towards the front, or is it towards the rear?
It's like in the middle.
Yeah, it's smack in the middle there. Towards the back of the property in this same top left photo or top left rendering, the square there before the decks is a sort of like an outdoor closet, and that's already sticking out. So I think the shower stall it'll come out a little bit beyond that, but not much beyond where that outdoor closet already exists.
That's good. Thank you.
Anything else from the board? Any questions? Jim?
No, I was looking at Roger shaking his head.
Eric, you done?
Unless the board has any further questions, we are done at this point.
That 5-foot section, what's up with that?
So prior to my purchase of the property, when we got the initial zoning, there was a 5-foot section that the neighbors on the north side of the building had built their ground floor deck onto what was technically this property.
Correct.
It was apparently not an issue initially, or not noticed initially, but when the property was going to be sold, it was noticed, and the prior owner and that neighbor came to a deal to sell that portion of the property to the neighbor, rather than go through trying to deconstruct their deck.
Was it deeded? Was there subdivision done?
Yeah, we have it papered. It's an easement. I think we did it as an easement, correct?
It's an easement?
Yes.
An easement to get to the dock in the back. I remember this case.
So they don't own the property, it's an easement on your property?
Well, no, sorry. I'm conflating two issues. There is an easement for that property for the riparian rights to get to their dock. This is a separate issue. This is a small 5x5 piece of what would have been our grass,
Right.
but is now their deck.
And it always was their deck. I mean,
I'm
their
not quite
deck was
sure.
there.
In my, you know,
The deck was there, right.
From my perspective, it was always their deck.
Yeah, right.
So when we bought the property, we had no issue allowing the prior owner to sell that. We didn't think that it was gonna impact the value of our property. And the real long story, for anyone that knows the neighborhood and knows the prior owner, it was somewhat tragic, in that, you know, he passed basically during this process. And he had a younger daughter, I think she was, you know, early college age. The property was underwater, didn't end up being a short sale, but she was effectively gonna get basically zero. So through this small parcel sale, she was able to get at least a couple dollars in her pocket. So that was something that Nick and I were happy to do in the process of the wholesale.
When you say underwater, you mean that the house itself was worth less than the bank, not that the property. Well, it's on the water. I wanna make sure it's clear.
Not
A lot
that
of water on
way.
the roof, right?
Correct.
Sweating.
The issue I see is there was a subdivision done, and it never came in front of the board.
I can check my title and our sale documents.
That
but
subdivision
I'm-
would have created a variance, and this board has not heard it.
Okay. Please allow me to review my documents, and if there's something that we can discuss, I'm happy to get you any of the documents that I have. And if there's something that needs to be done, we're obviously happy to do that.
And you're right, Mr. McLaurin, it hasn't come up. We checked the title. It's odd how it was done, because I don't think that portion was properly recordable, not just that it wasn't properly recorded. So as, you know, at one point, it would be technically cutting off that piece. It didn't come before the board, and incorrect subdivision, which I'm not sure how that would have gotten recorded at the county clerk's office.
Right, because it was never an improved subdivision.
It's a piece of land that doesn't actually exist as a saleable lot.
Correct.
But
Basically, you're just moving a lot line, I get it. And not that it's a problem obtaining it.
Well, I don't know, it could be a problem, because if you think about it, this has to go not only to the city, but it's gotta go to the Atlantic County
Exactly.
Planning Board, and then it's also gotta go to the county clerk's office. You can only record it if it comes in as a proper subdivision signed off on by Mr. Patterson and the city clerk. So when we go to do subdivisions, it ain't easy. The amount of signatures that are required on these forms, it's fairly significant. So we'll look at all the documents, see how that got done, but it may just be a private deal between two property owners. Because the title is clear.
But he has clear title to that 5-foot piece?
We're not sure 100% how that would have been sold off.
But let's say you do have title and you want to transfer it, do you have to come back before the board?
If he has title, wants to
Yes.
transfer it,
The 5-foot piece, at least, to the best of my knowledge, that is no longer my property. That is my neighbor's property.
But we have no evidence of that. There's no subdivision done, so maybe you still do own it.
but
And
that
if
would be, I don't think Mr. Bechtel's objecting to that. He's saying if the neighbor wants to perfect that subdivision, that's on the neighbor. He already kind of washed his hands of that piece.
No, my question is, would you have to come back
Yes.
before the board?
Well, any subdivision would have to come back, whether it's a variance.
Would that
or not,
hold
it's
up
not
the
gonna-
construction of this building?
No.
Okay, that's my point.
I guess your predecessor, as far as you know, sold a 5x5 portion of his property to the neighbor. Is that?
You say it much better than me.
Is that, but there's
Which
no
is
evidence of
illegal.
anything technically coming before the board or being recorded. But potentially it could affect your lot line if it's somehow legally perfected.
But Ms. Casey said it correctly. That would be considered by law an illegal subdivision. Because without coming to the board, and without being recorded at the county, it's not actually in existence because that lot doesn't exist. You know, it doesn't have to just go to the county. It's got to go to the tax assessor, who then assigns it a separate lot.
Well, my point, if we pass this tonight, is this going to hold up your whole project until that happens? That's my concern.
No, that would be a separate issue altogether.
Okay.
And maybe it holds up the sale of the property to a third party.
Absolutely.
But it doesn't change.
But he could still do his reconstruction?
But absolutely, he couldn't sell it.
But he could continue with what he's
Never
doing.
bought
Yeah,
it.
well, he can't
You do
work
not
that
have
quick.
clear title. You might have title insurance. You
He
do
has
not.
clear title, the neighbor doesn't have the clear title.
Right.
That's what I think comes down to.
Right.
There's a 5x5 section on in dispute.
So there were
It might still be his if it wasn't properly done, or the neighbor. Well, I know there's a law that if there's a boundary line dispute, that you can adjust that
It was nice of the
without,
previous owner to give that girl money. That's
with-
how I look at it.
right,
I
without,
think Ms. Casey's correct.
yeah, I mean,
But we'll deal with that as we deal with regard to the sale, but it doesn't have to do with the,
If it doesn't affect that, then it doesn't concern us.
It affects coverage
yeah,
for this.
Not for what they're doing.
it just affects the, well,
Okay, that answered my question.
Does affect the variance.
yeah, and that was my issue, and it does, I agree.
Mr. Palmisano? Huh? Oh. Yeah, he is. You know, what are you, Tom Collins? Please come up and yes, you are. State your name and then you'll be sworn in.
Hi, Jackie Schulman, and our home is at 8609 Amherst, so we'll be right next door.
Okay.
And can you spell your last name, please?
Sure. I'll do this, right. Shulman. By the way, this is a very interesting process.
Just have to,
I'm a retired attorney, and I'm enjoying
just gonna
this.
swear you in real quick.
Okay,
Swear
so-
affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth?
Yes,
There you go.
there we go. So we're mainly here, first of all, I'm a visual person, so I can't tell from, we got a letter. I just want to make sure, what's happening,
Am I in
right?
the way, ma'am?
No, well, that's
Go
fine.
ahead. You wanna-
I just want to ask, so if we're on Amherst, and
Are you on the Longport side?
yes, we are on the Longport side. And we did sadly lose our neighbor Sandor. It was very tragic. And the house is in bad, I'm not arguing, bad condition. If you're familiar with the area, we don't have wide space between the homes there. By the way, we feel very blessed. We've been here for 16 years. It's just a wonderful, wonderful living off the bay, the lagoon. But I just, everybody's been very respectful. I just can't quite, now, my husband was saying condensers or, is that the air conditioners? Is that coming on our side?
Yeah, right next to yours, on your side.
All right. We don't have a big space there. So I would like whatever the, is it 3 feet that you were saying there has to be?
5 feet.
5 feet?
You're meeting that
All right,
requirement.
we have a very, and where is the, and I heard something about a changing area or the exterior shower. We were told.
You can't give testimony.
We were told, when we bought our house, which was also in bad condition, and we, resided, re-windowed, and we wanted to put in a permanent shower. And we were told that was not permitted because it would take us out, that we could hang a nozzle and put and which we did. We have a little curtain, right, but not permanent. That's what we had. And I respected it, we didn't argue it, that's what we were told. So I'm a little concerned on our one side now, we're going to have the condensers and we're going to have a permanent shower that I was told was not permitted because we didn't have enough room.
They have enough room.
Pardon?
They have enough room. You do not.
I do not.
Right.
Right, okay. Why is everything on our side? I guess I would ask you, there's 2 sides to the, what's going on the other side?
He cannot speak unless he's under.
All right, yeah, okay. Yeah, what's going, I just wonder why everything is on our side.
Given that the closet.
You're going to have to speak into the microphone.
Come
Oh.
up, you gotta share the mic.
So, given that that outdoor closet is already on that side and we have some shrubbery there, it just worked out better where, and also, I believe based on how the plumbing is situated, to have the condensers on that side
All right,
next
so
to the
that's-
shower.
Is it more
next to
hidden from the
closet.
street? Is
It
it
would be much
because
more
the
hidden from the
closet's
street.
there, it's more hidden from the street?
No, because it wouldn't be behind the closet, but it's more hidden from the street, just from the perspective of when you're driving down the street. You can't really see down that alley, or I'll call it an alley, but you can see down the other side, which is a little bit larger due to the neighbor's property being a little bit larger on that side.
But there's no variance required for that, so
I'm just very
Right.
surprised that everything is coming on one side. and-
I don't think they like you.
Pardon?
I don't think they like you.
There's
I
a,
couldn't take it personally, what can I
there's
tell
a
you?
microphone in the middle.
No, we've chatted, and we're thrilled that they're fixing the house, but it's a close area. It's a very close area, and having condensers and
Right.
noise, and then the shower,
Well, my point was, there's nothing we can do about it. I mean, that would be your discussion with him.
Right.
That's fine, but there's
Okay.
nothing the board can do
Okay.
about that unless it required a variance. And that was why we had the questions. Does it meet the 3 foot? Does it meet the 5
so
foot?
there isn't any need for a variance for the shower on that particular lot,
Correct. As per their plan.
per their plan.
Right.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anyone else from the public? Questions? Public portion is closed. Who's he talking to?
Santa Claus.
Anything else from the board?
Public closed?
Yeah, we closed the public portion.
Rich,
Would
we're
you-
hungry.
Would you read the,
Rich, I have a question.
yeah, go ahead.
I'm a little confused on the 5x5 section. The previous owner of this property sold that, the daughter of the deceased.
I think maybe the best way to put it is, the former owner of the property made a deal to sell the parcel, which perhaps shouldn't have been done. And it was completed after he passed away?
Honestly, I don't remember.
That sale may or may not be permitted, depending on whether as Ms. Casey said, would have been an illegal subdivision or not. If it was legal, something would have had to come before the board, and they get filed with the tax assessor and the city clerk, county planning board, and the county clerk. I don't think that was done. Now, whether or not that changes what the proposed owner of that property thinks they own, I guess we'll have to find out in the future.
I know there's documentation for it in terms of title, and Ponzio did the survey, but and part of my ignorance on the language,
Hand
I'm
him the
not sure.
microphone, and Eric, you can speak into it.
Part of my ignorance in the terminology here, but I know that there was documentation for the sale. Obviously, I wasn't a party to the sale, but it's specifically noted in the title documents that I received, and there's also, I believe, maybe a separate easement that was designed for it. So, and again, I think that's the right.
Good thing you have title insurance.
I think that's the word
We'll
for
be
it.
using it.
But I believe it's outside of the purview of this specific discussion, but I know it's piqued everyone's interest. If there's something that I can do in terms of the documents that I have, I'm happy to provide.
Yeah, maybe that's a good idea. We'll at least get it organized, and I'll get it to the board to the extent they want it, just so you have something for your file, but.
I believe the assessor will need whatever it is you have.
Mr. Mato said it may have been a lot line adjustment. That could have been the case where one party takes from another party, as long as it doesn't make the second party's lot undersized, but we'll look into that for sure. Sure.
But even still, the assessor will need to make the adjustments.
Right.
For the city tax map.
If that helps us, I'm all for it.
My question is that Mr. Bethel was okay with owning it or okay with not owning it, and the neighbor obviously wants to own it, but the reality matter is somebody has to own it. And that
Sounds
has to be
yeah.
rectified somehow.
It sounds like the
If
neighbor.
not, I got 5x5 lots in the yard.
It sounds like the neighbor owns it, subject to confirming whether or not it was properly cut off the line. But based on what we're hearing tonight, it probably wasn't properly cut off the line, unless there's something else going on. Mr. Ponzio was involved, perhaps he told somebody, you have to go eventually file something, and it was just never done.
And it doesn't affect the variances in anything we're doing, and I don't think we even want the documents, the planning board,
I think
as
Ms.
any
Casey
part
might
of
want it for the city clerk, but we'll
Sure,
take care of that.
city clerk, assessor, that's a different story. It's just not really our issue.
My concern was if that was going to affect these variances tonight and whether you could continue, and the answer seems to be no. So I don't think we need to go any
No,
further
that's
with
fine,
it.
but I don't want to diminish the importance of it. I think
Right.
Mr. Group had a good question, and the city's going to want to know how this happened without it being involved, because that would make the next door neighbor's property potentially larger, it would affect the tax assessment.
Right.
It would affect, you know, a
But it
bunch.
doesn't affect us tonight.
Correct, but you're aware there's an issue that needs to be addressed, but for our purposes, we can go forward and it does not affect the variances, but it's something that should be addressed.
All right, would you read the,
Sure, we closed public?
yeah, we closed public.
Okay, someone needs to make a motion for C variance relief for a side yard setback of 4.83 feet, where 8 feet is required, a combined side yard setback of 17.83 feet, where 18.5 feet is required, and a building height of 32.67 feet, where
30 feet.
30 feet's the permitted maximum. Thank you. And the conditions will be that, although the condensers are already enclosed, the applicants agreed to utilize that sound bedding material as represented by the applicant during the course of the hearing, and all other conditions set forth in Mr. McLaren's report of December 19th, 2018.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Tom Collins?
A lot of talk about a small roof. Just a point of interest, Mr. Goldstein, making a case that we're going to be shorter than if they tore it down and put parking underneath. It doesn't go really, because we do that because we get 4 parking spaces. I'd rather have the height for the 4 parking spaces than the height with no parking spaces. However, this is very de minimis. I think what they're doing is going to be an improvement to the neighborhood. It's going to aesthetically and factually comply to code, make our city a little bit better. I see no negatives, and I think that it's a good proposal, so I vote in favor.
Clem Wasleski?
Really, very simple application. The proposed work will let this house sit more happily with its neighbors. I approve.
Rich Patterson?
I approve for the same reasons.
Mike Cristaldi?
I approve for the same reasons.
Jim Galantino?
We gotta get Nico back to work, come on. That trailer's been sitting there on Amherst Avenue for I vote yes.
Craig Palmisano?
Yeah, we wouldn't let you build a flat roof now anyway, so it's minimus and I approve it.
Mike Richmond?
I think it'll improve the neighborhood. I'm going to vote for it.
Application passes 7-0.
Thank you.
Do we have other business?
I gotta go home.
Do we have to approve these meeting dates? Or are they approved?
They should have been on your agenda. No.
Meeting dates.
So we do need to approve them.
Okay. Has everybody gotten a copy of the meeting dates for next year?
It's on the table. Everyone should have one in front of them.
Clem has asked why no November meeting.
It was in the email that she sent
I'm
to
not
us. She
coming
explained.
Thanksgiving.
You're not?
I'm not.
You're what?
I'm not coming for Thanksgiving.
She's
There's
not
no
coming
November.
Thanksgiving. It interfered with commission meetings, and there was no time to have it, so we combined November and December, right in the middle. That was the reason for it.
6 hours.
Yep.
Marathon.
October 24th and then December 12th. So it'd probably be a long meeting because it's going to be, should be a lot of cases then. So has everyone seen this? I would like a motion to accept this next week. All in favor? Opposed? None. Motion passes. Anything else, Roger?
No.
Does anybody make a motion we can get out of here?
I'll make that.
Okay. All in favor?
Who seconded that?